My name is Sue Sisley, and I'm a physician. I'm an MD. I practice in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I practice both internal medicine and psychiatry. But I am a board-certified psychiatrist. I take care of many seriously mentally ill patients. And I'm also the principal investigator of a randomized controlled trial looking at 4 different strains of smoked marijuana for the treatment of PTSD in military veterans. Mm-hmm. So that's my primary role here at the conference. Is I'm making people aware of our study, which would hopefully answer some questions about does marijuana help PTSD, and we have so many military veterans who are suffering, and we have so few treatment options available. So we have many meds out there that the veterans get pummeled with. They get put through the gauntlet of every medicine on the market, but the truth is that there's only 2 FDA-approved medicines for PTSD, and both of them are pretty worthless. So that's how I started getting involved in the area of marijuana research, because I had so many military veterans reporting that they were getting benefit from marijuana and much more results than anything I could give them by prescription, So I started to finally listen and learn from the veterans how they were using this plant to manage their PTSD very successfully. And we're hoping that this trial will help quantify, help really put it through the rigors of a controlled environment so we can understand and collect objective data on how these patients are responding to this plant.
So you see the potential in use of marijuana for any kind of mental disorders or psychiatric treatments?
Yeah, I'm starting to recognize that marijuana may have tremendous benefit in a variety of psychiatric illness. The first one that I acknowledged was PTSD, because we had so many people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder who just were not getting better, and they were being put on 8, 10 different prescriptions, all for this one complex illness. Mm-hmm. And in fact, then all these patients were able to walk away from all of their prescription meds and use this single intervention of the marijuana plant to manage the whole constellation of PTSD. So it was really compelling. But the truth is that if PTSD symptoms can be controlled by marijuana, if you look at each of those symptoms in PTSD, you can think about how marijuana might be useful in each individual symptom. For instance, the hallmark of post-traumatic stress disorder is insomnia, right? People can't sleep, and they have chronic sleep deprivation for years. And so suddenly, the veterans have learned to utilize the plant at night to help them initiate sleep, and it works much better than any of the medicines that I can give them, and it's much less addictive than those awful sleep meds that I pummel these guys with all the time. So I think if you look at anxiety, that's another component of PTSD, also relieved by marijuana. But the opposite is true also, that there are certain strains of marijuana that people are worried might exacerbate PTSD, right, or anxiety. There are certain phenotypes of marijuana that might make psychosis worse or anxiety worse. And I think all of us know of patients who have used marijuana, a certain strain that they bought on the black market that they didn't know what it was, and they might have gotten a worsening of their anxiety. But those are so rare. And so on the whole, marijuana has remarkably low toxicity. It's much more benign than any of the medicines that I prescribe to people every day. And the key is learning to work with the plant to find that best fit. You find that strain, that phenotype of marijuana that really addresses the majority of your symptoms, and it might even be 2 different, I know that there are many patients who use one strain in the daytime, a more activating strain, and then a more sedating strain at night. A lot of the military veterans attack the problem that way. So I don't want to give your audience the impression that marijuana has no side effects, but I also recognize that marijuana is far safer than most of the medicines that are FDA approved.
Exactly, that's for me totally contradictory that let's say negative side effects of psychiatric drugs. I have a list of at least a meter of them, and really very dangerous one. And I talked to lately to many patients. They confirmed that they were using the conventional psychiatric treatment had those side effects. Some of them are that they induce violence, they induce self-violence, they induce hallucination, all the variety of psychiatric problems, which are then typically treated with more psychiatric drugs, right? And nobody is worried about it. On the other hand, marijuana is in the first group of forbidden drugs.
Yeah, it makes no sense. It is the situation is completely insane. It doesn't. There's no logic here, and it's just it's a government-enforced structure to keep marijuana illegal and keep it prohibited and out of the hands of sick people who desperately need it, and it's really shameful. And I think more and more seminars like this are starting to shed light on this and empower the patients to demand access to this medicine, to say we are entitled, this is a God-given plant, and we are entitled to safe, legal access to lab-tested marijuana. There's no reason that people should be left to meet people in dark parking lots and, be stuck on the black market when there's a very viable treatment option here. And, I presented here a discussion about how marijuana research is systematically impeded in the U.S. because I know in talking to the folks here from Slovenia and Croatia and Serbia that they are desperately waiting for the United States to take the lead on research. They were hoping that we would, pave the way for more science. And in fact, our research is all being blocked too. I mean, we can research the harmful side effects of marijuana,
Exactly, yeah.
but we're not allowed to, understand the effectiveness of marijuana.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the government has already told us that marijuana has no medical benefit, so why would you want to study the effectiveness?
Yeah. But I do believe strongly that the truth cannot be stopped because people do talk, and there are so wonderful effects of using marijuana for the whole spectrum, the whole variety of different illnesses. It's helpful and it empowers people, the immune system, the whole body system, while on the other hand again, those psychiatric drugs, they destroy organs and all the physical functions in some time. So I'm practically really worried about it.
Yeah, no, you should be. I mean, a lot of the psychiatric medicines are very toxic. Many of them have, really severe side effects and drug interactions that can plague patients for a long time. So I hope, the veteran community starts to wonder if this is a conspiracy to keep them subdued. You know what I mean? Maybe if they keep them on all these medicines, that the veterans will be very sedated and passive and not question the government and not, and so this may be a vast strategy to keep the public at bay and keep them not questioning authority. And that's why the government views marijuana as so dangerous, because they know that if, like you say, if patients become empowered and start asking questions and start demanding research, that takes us out of the dark ages, They want to keep research in the dark ages and prevent it from moving forward. But fortunately, more and more patients are learning, patients are teaching each other how to use this plant, and that is going to be the revolution that we're seeing. It's going to continue to snowball,
But it seems to me today in our society that regular emotions are treated today almost like illness.
Yes.
So it's terrifying that in Slovenia the official statistics says that each third person is on antidepressants. Right?
Yeah,
so I guess there's more people even on antidepressants.
Right.
And I don't know what consequences this might have on a long term.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that this is a very, how do you say, I think this is a very shrewd marketing campaign from pharmaceutical companies to persuade everyone that they have depression, that they have anxiety, that there's something very, very sick about them, and that they need to turn to that medicine in order to save their life. And then they tell you the list of side effects on the commercial, and people are still not dissuaded because they're led to believe that they are deeply ill and that they need a pill to fix them. And unfortunately, the marketing is so persuasive that people, and so it's really tricky. I don't believe that 1 in 3 people here are truly depressed, but yet they're all on medicine. Every third person is on medicine. It just shows you the power of these pharmaceutical companies. They spend billions of dollars each year to try to persuade the public that they're ill. They have all these campaigns in place to try to, they create support groups and everything to try to make everyone believe that they're really ill. So it's a huge, huge problem, because I think, what makes people, what creates problems is that these pharmaceutical companies have a tremendous power over our elected officials. Most of these pharmaceutical companies spend millions of dollars providing political contributions to campaigns so that they can influence these decision makers later and influence the public policy that is around marijuana, because pharmaceutical companies feel very threatened by marijuana because they see that it's already stealing part of their market share. How many patients and military veterans do you know that have walked away from all of their prescription meds and said, I am not going to be, tortured with these medicines anymore, and they've simply moved over to using marijuana alone to treat their illnesses. I mean, that is a huge threat to big pharma. The pharmaceutical companies cannot survive if people keep doing this, and that's a really huge issue for them. So they are going to spend loads of money on lobbyists and campaign PAC checks, political action committees, to try to make sure that the public policy, that drug policy reform never happens, and that marijuana prohibition stays firmly in place. And so they're the biggest enemies of marijuana research. They don't ever want the whole plant marijuana to ever be studied. They don't want any of our data to ever see the light of day.
Have you met a person that psychiatric drugs cured him or her?
Oh,
in the whole history, I'm wondering if anybody got cured by psychiatric drugs.
No, but that's what they claim, right? They all claim that my drug is going to put you into remission. That's what they call it when you're cured. They call it remission. But the truth is that these drugs, people may go into remission. Rarely, I don't see it very often. But some people do, their symptoms do get better, but then they're back out of remission just as fast. As soon as you stop the medicine, you're back into, plagued by all these symptoms. So the fact is that, it is extremely unusual. All the pharmaceutical companies claim that their medicine cures an illness, but the truth, the data that they use is the the studies that are done through the FDA are all biased because these investigators that are participating in clinical trials are all paid immense amounts of money by the pharmaceutical companies to make the data look a certain way. They're all biased. So the data comes out of the FDA trials and it shows it's a miracle drug. Look, it's cured this and cures that. And then suddenly we put it into practice, we start using it on patients and we say, this doesn't work and it has a ton of side effects. Now my patient is 30 pounds heavier, they can't have sex, they don't, they feel hopeless and suicidal. So yeah, I mean.
Yeah, because I heard from people that they were in some emotional crisis perhaps, but still normal, and then they started psychiatric treatment, conventional, and then really all those symptoms started. They became suicidal, violent, they felt terrible, and they got 3, 4, 5 more diagnoses.
Yeah, so I mean there are rare cases where the benefits of these drugs sometimes outweigh the risks. There are some very, some seriously mentally ill patients who do sometimes benefit, especially from very potent antipsychotics that can control. Some patients have really severe problems with having very dark, horrific thoughts, voices in their head, and sometimes, normal, natural treatments don't work for them, and sometimes we need to offer them other medicine that might help suppress
But perhaps there's a chance to start with marijuana, because I heard from all those people that when they threw away those psychiatric drugs, that was incredibly helpful. Cannabis oil,
Yeah, in some cases, but that's an area that really deserves and desperately needs more research, because the problem is, because there are these rare episodes where marijuana can cause increased psychosis, increased paranoia or voices, that's what we need to tease out, is which strains will promote better management of schizophrenia and avoid making it worse. And there are, for sure, strains like that. There are definitely some varieties of marijuana that are beneficial to schizophrenia. That's been documented. There's some German study that confirmed that. But it needs to be replicated in a larger scale so that we can understand. Because if that were to be true, if we were to find out in a real rigorous trial that this was the case, this could open up a whole new dimension for psychiatric patients who currently are refused access to the medicine. But you're right, I mean, I have just anecdotally, I have so many patients who are schizophrenic who report a benefit from marijuana. But the problem is, again, they're buying it on the street because you can't qualify for medical marijuana card in the United States for a psychiatric illness. There are no qualifying conditions for psych problems. So the problem is they would have to qualify under something else like chronic pain or something like that. But anyway, so the bottom line is many of my schizophrenic patients are actively using marijuana daily to manage their symptoms. And they do report that it's much more effective than any of the antipsychotics I prescribe to them. But at the same time, often the marijuana that they're getting is so inconsistent. So they don't get the same quality, they don't get the same potency or strain, and so then they end up doing well on a certain strain, and then they change, not by choice, and then they have to contend with new challenges. So I would say that's the only thing that big pharma offers us, is they do have, a purified medicine that has consistent dosing. That's a value.
You mentioned beautifully today that the beautiness of this plant is that it cannot be standardized, it cannot be it's
put into a
box, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why we're fighting so hard to keep the model of patient self-titration, that the patient should be empowered to adjust their own dose precisely to hit that therapeutic mark and then to stop. They don't have to keep going until they're, stoned or whatever. They just try to to get a therapeutic benefit, and then they stop and get on with their life.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that is a beauty of the plant. The problem is that the FDA doesn't like that model, obviously. They want us to pigeonhole everyone into fixed dosing. You have to take a gram twice a day, and that doesn't work, ruins everything, because, the patients...
In Slovenia now it's allowed synthetic THC.
Okay, from big pharmaceutical?
Yeah, so it's again their lobby that is gonna earn money.
Oh,
but I want you to tell me one more time what you had in your lecture, the sentence of Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, let's see if I can remember. So basically he said that to remove a single constituent from a plant is an affront to nature, right? So if you remove, if for instance in marijuana, if you remove isolate a single cannabinoid out of the plant, it's an affront or an insult to nature. And it's like trying to, removing one cannabinoid out of the, hundreds of cannabinoids that are in the plant is like trying to take the intelligence out of the plant while leaving the wisdom behind. Yeah. So you leave the wisdom behind. The wisdom of the plant is in the natural balance of all of these cannabinoids working together in concert with each other, synergistically, to create what we now call the entourage effect. That's the beauty of the plant, and that's being lost now by all these pharmaceutical companies trying to isolate a single cannabinoid and synthesize it chemically and put it into a pill and patent it and make tons of money. And all that's going to do is, make loads of money for pharma but not help sick people. And, the big pharma has never been able to replicate the efficacy of the natural plant. They've tried since Meshulam uncovered the endocannabinoid system in the 90s. Since the 90s, big pharma's been pouring billions of dollars into trying to replicate this, and they can't.
Yeah.
So...
Is it true that the Congress allowed in the US that antidepressants, they don't need to have written down any more negative side effects, only 3 of them? And since then, the propaganda commercial increased for 700%. And the target is actually children, the youth, and women, actually,
Wow.
Is that true? Do you notice this in the
Well,
US?
I noticed that there's been a surge of commercials on TV, through doctors' offices. They have a very well-funded campaign to market their meds. So the commercials and the literature are very misleading. They take data that's clearly biased from pharmaceutical sponsored studies, and they try to persuade people that their drug is essential and that you can't possibly live without it. So it's a big problem. I think that it is true that the FDA has allowed the drug companies only have to report side effects that occur in, I think the cutoff was more than 10% of the patient population. So they don't even have to report all of them in their advertising, you're right, but they do have to report it on the PI, the product insert that goes into each bottle. They have to have all of them laid out, but how many patients actually read that? Most don't, because who has time and who has the ability to read this fine print? It's not easy. So it's all about buyer beware, patient beware. Be cautious, because these meds are really problematic.
Exactly. Okay, something you would like to say at the end of the word?
Let's see. I think just the main thing is I hope that the government here can embrace the notion of marijuana as medicine and allow safe legal access for your most sick and debilitated patients, and eventually, once they get a comfort level with that, to understand that this is probably much safer than alcohol and probably deserves to be fully legalized, because ultimately, there's a lot of patients who won't be able to access a medical marijuana program for a variety of reasons. I mean, medical marijuana is going to be a good start in a country that doesn't even have that. but eventually I hope that they recognize that this plant never belonged as a controlled substance. The side effect profile of marijuana is so mild and so short-lived that there is no reason it should even be a scheduled drug. It should be unscheduled, nutraceutical, dealt with.
I guess an ordinary aspirin has more side effects.
Oh yeah, and it's it should be treated as an herbal supplement, just like any other food product. So I hope that that the government starts to read the existing data. There's hundreds of published studies already confirming the therapeutic benefit of marijuana. They may not be high-powered, randomized controlled trials, but there are some. There are, as much as the government has fought so hard to suppress this research, there are some very legitimate studies that have slipped through that are published in peer-reviewed medical journals that verify that this plant has a myriad of crucial medical benefits that need to be more fully examined. And the only way to study this plant in a rigorous manner is by ending prohibition. You cannot study this plant in an atmosphere of prohibition. So it's, even if the government would just view it that way and realize that the progress of research can't move forward without ending, without enabling legalization.
And perhaps also people would need to question more the negative side effects of conventional medicines or drugs.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that the consumer, the patients have to start asking why the FDA is putting all these drugs on the market with these really massive list of side effects. They put them on the market and then they put a black box warning on it that says, watch out, this may cause you to be suicidal, but we're still going to approve it. You can still take it. It's a crazy situation. So we'll see. Hopefully the people here, the citizens of these countries will rise up and demand that the government act. It's not, in the US we couldn't get that. We couldn't wait for our elected officials to do the right thing because we knew they never would. So we went, state by state and put it to the voters on a ballot initiative. And now we have almost 35 states with some form of medical marijuana law, 24 states that have full comprehensive medical marijuana. So that's unfortunately, it's disgraceful that our government officials are so lazy that they don't want to look at the existing literature and make a good decision on their own, that we have to force their hand or circumvent them by going to the ballot box and using the voters to get around them. But thank God we have that mechanism in place, and thank God we have the funding from devoted supporters who are willing to pay for this. But it's so sad that in a lot of these countries that are so impoverished, who has the money to pay for all these ballot initiatives? It's not possible. So we have to rely on these elected officials to be sensible and look at what the data that's available. But
thank you.
Yeah.